Here we are, coming to you live and in person again, the three of us. Great show. This is show number 102 in our third year of broadcasting. Never in a million years would have thought we would have lasted this long. My name is Mitchell K.C. Hill, as it says right there. I'm the old guy that remembers the golden age of radio, the young guy that knows the current radio and all that stuff that they're doing is Mr. Alexander Knight. There he is, the son of David Hasselhoff.
You always say that.
I think it's funny.
Man. I am a child of the 80s, yeah, born in 82, born in the year that Knight Rider launched, September 1982.
And you were fascinated by that, weren't you, as a kid?
Man, I was obsessed with that show as a kid. I don't have a copy of it digitally. I'm going to have to get it for you because there is a photo of a very young me, probably 5 years old, wearing blue corduroy pants and a authentic leather jacket, a members only.
I was just going to say, is it a members only? Yeah.
That my grandfather bought me. He somehow managed to track down a shop that made an authentic leather jacket that could fit a 5-year-old, and he spent a fortune on it. And
Did the car have the little Cylon?
It did not. You know, that would have been a nice touch, but it did not. But anyways, we're not here to talk about leather jackets.
Oh, sorry.
I'm here to talk about the Last Angry DJ. Thanks for showing up today. Good to see all of you in the live chat. This is episode 102, and if this is the first time that you're coming into the show, this is the show that is all about the world of broadcast, which is all an all-encompassing term that covers terrestrial radio, broadcast TV, podcast, YouTubers, influencers, all that sort of stuff, all the work that we do. And it's the show where old media meets new media. And we got people of all generations on this show and all levels of experience to talk about all that sort of stuff. So it's going to be a good one. And we got Mark Giuliani here. What's going on, Mark?
How are you, Alex? And how are you, Mitch? Listen,
I'm
if you guys have questions out there,
still breathing.
Go to ask.thelastangry.dj.com. That's ask.thelastangry.dj.com. We'll get those questions read, and hopefully our Alex and Mitch can answer them for you. And we've already got chat going, and it says, Vic Hernandez says, 1982, the year I started working at Arby's. See how much he has in common with this show?
Yikes.
He's got Arby's and awesome. 82. 82, the year I graduated from high school. He also loves cast iron
Arby's
pans.
stands for? Arby's roast beef. Do you get it? Do you get it?
Are you making that up or is that real?
No, it's real. Arby's. A-R-B-Y apostrophe S. Arby's.
Okay.
R-B is roast beef. And their original sign said Arby's is delicious.
Right. Can you tell me?
Delicious.
I've always tried to make heads or tails of the Arby's. I'm sorry, I know this is not related, but just quickly, the Arby's logo. What the hell is that thing?
It's a hat. It's a 10-gallon hat.
Okay, I never understood. As a kid, every time I saw that Arby's logo, I'd be like, "What is that thing?"
10-gallon hat. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's what their cups were for the soda fountain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
it used to be a Western kind of Western theme. In fact, they went through one market. They've gone through so many marketing campaigns. They had one. It's better out there. That was their big campaign. I think
I think they went a little too far with that. A little too far with
it's better out there. Where?
Yeah, right. Out there. Where?
Out there. But anyhow, yeah, Arby's is my favorite. In fact, I'm probably going to head out to Arby's after I get off the show today. I'm jonesing for a nice beef and cheddar with a Jamoke shake. See, Mark's starting to drool there. There he goes. Does that fit into your new diet, Mark?
I have to lean over.
He doesn't want to do the show anymore.
He's already just drooling on the show. So, yeah, thanks for getting those questions in there. We appreciate it. We'll answer as many as we can with the program. We're going to talk about some interesting stuff. This is the version we call the Broadcast Boffins version, named so by Alex. And I asked him a while back, what does that exactly mean? What is a broadcast boffin? It's just a bunch of words to sound cool together?
No.
Or I think in England, boffins is technical, geeky people.
100%, you got it. A boffin could traditionally be described as, it's somebody that wears a lab coat. Typically, he's got a beard, and a beard, not just any beard, like mine is not well trimmed. So a beard that goes down your neck like this, sort of not well kept, and, smart, intellectual person.
Well, when I was in school, I was a geek. I'll admit it. This is like before
A
computers
circus
were big.
geek. You're biting the heads off.
No, not the
chickens.
kind that bites the heads off live chickens, as I famously have said before. But that's what they did, by the way. I had a pocket protector. And I used to, my yearbook picture was me in a nice jacket, which my mom clothed me. So I had a nice jacket with a pocket protector and pen sticking out of it. And my mom says, for Christ's sake, why did you have to put the pocket protector in your jacket? I said, Mom, it's a sign of honor to be part of the Geek Squad. The trouble was, I was the only one who was a Geek Squad.
Okay, now explain something to me. Were pens that unreliable in the 60s or in the 70s?
Yeah, they leaked.
They leaked that badly?
Yes, but that badly. Remember the old pens, Mark, that they had that had the cartridge in them, and you had to screw the cartridge and it would pierce it, and it was literally a pen type pen, like the old fashioned,
right,
where the tip would fill, and you always ended up with a shirt. You ended up with a shirt that leaked some amount of pens, and Bic pens and roller pens were, I guess, they had problems.
The felt tips, like flares. If you forgot to put the cap on, and you put the pen in your shirt pocket,
the flares were the thing. They kind of took over for that. So eventually, we retired all that. I hope that answers your question, Alex. That the pens were a big deal.
Yeah, it does.
But people had those little cartridges, and I used to be fascinated by those little cartridges full of ink, and you do like, and it would splatter all over the place, and it would be quite a mess. So I called attention to myself, which is a big mistake, by the way, if you're a kid and you're a geek, is don't call attention to yourself, because the football team is going to beat the crap out of you at some point. But see, here's where I got around that, and then I'll finish my story, is that I also was the manager of the football team, and I was the guy that gave out the ice packs when they would hurt themselves, and I also handled the food. So, if you wanted a nice roast beef sandwich from Arby's, you had to come to me. And I had the sodas and the Gatorade. They had Gatorade back then, and all the other stuff. And I also was drafted to do all the lighting for lighting events that the school required, and the sound. So I did the lighting and the sound and the light dimmers that we used. Remember those old-fashioned rheostat dimmer boxes that they had?
Oh, yeah.
Ours had wheels on it. We could roll it around, and we plug in these big light fixtures, and I'd be there, and this thing would be giving off heat. And if you ever reached in there and dropped a big gulp in there, you would electrocute yourself. So
but do you want to know? Do you want to know what I always tell people? Like, if you want to avoid getting picked on in high school. Now, I'm not saying be popular. Okay, I'm just saying. So one of my strategies in secondary school was to be like Sweden, to be neutral territory. So my secret was dress cool and go to the gym and look decent. If you looked pretty good, like you took care of yourself, you got the respect of the jocks and the popular guys, and then women looked at you differently.
Unfortunately, I didn't go to the gym that much. I just didn't like the idea of showering with people I didn't really know that well, and they would always pick on me. And I was super skinny. I was like, what's the cop on Andy Griffith? What was his name? Come on, Mark, help me with this.
Andy Griffith. Yeah.
Yeah, on the Andy Griffith, the sheriff Andy, and then
Opie was the kid. Let's see, who was the
guy that was
deputy?
Don Knotts.
Deputy Don Knotts.
Don Knotts, who played the character. Anyhow, I look like Don Knotts without the uniform, so that'll give you some idea. But then I got back at everybody. Barney Fife, exactly. That was a character. I got back at them all because the school management realized that I was very helpful, and they let me off to work part-time. So I did swing shifts at the local top 40 radio station, and I could get off anytime, day or night, from classes to go and work at the local radio station. And that gave me a certain cachet with the girls because I was Bobby Dark. And I got away with murder with stuff that I could do and get away with. I could drive off campus because it was a campus-style school. So anyhow, that's what I did. That's how that was my misspent youth. Utes. I was a Ute working at the school. So anyhow, where are we? I'm lost.
What? You were a what?
We should probably talk about our first topic today.
What's a Ute?
That's in the rundown.
Fred Gwynn over there. What's the first topic? We're building a modern studio. Okay, that's
We
cool.
are.
What's that look like? And, I've seen them from the old days. And here's one thing that I can tell you about the old radio studios that I worked in. The companies that I worked for, even if they were hugely successful, never upgraded any of the stuff. They had old crap, like tube amplifiers and mixers with
And they
big
probably
pots
hung
in
on
them.
to it for way too long, right?
They really did it. I remember working at a station in San Antonio, Texas called KONO, and the studio was about as big as a small phone closet. I kid you not. The turntables were like 16-inch turntables. They were huge.
Wow. Yeah,
And
I've seen those. I've seen those.
You had to give them a boost to get them started. So the stuff was really old. So that's the old days. So that sort of sets the standard for the way, because back then we were radio disc jockeys and we actually played records. But I'll answer a question that's coming up from somebody about that in just a minute. But for now, a modern studio, I think, would it be unfair for me to say, Mark, that you're considering building a new studio? I'll let you say what you want to do, and then we'll talk about that room.
So yes, the studios we have are, shall we say, in need of some loving care, and
You're still holding on to the stuff, like I said.
right. Well, yes, we are. They were designed in 1990, and some of the equipment still has tubes in it. But anyway, it doesn't still have tubes in it. But anyway, so
Say, wow.
the thought occurred to take a studio that's 30 years old, and you're not sure where everything goes, all the wiring. You don't really want to just go in there over a weekend, rip everything out, and rebuild a new studio. Even if you could afford all new equipment and throw it in there, it's going to take you a month to set it up, test it, and do all that stuff. So you almost want to build a whole new facility, or put an addition on it, build a new room that's just dedicated to being a studio. So having said that, we've talked in office hours about doing different things. We've talked about, would you build a inset studio where you'd have all the guests come in and have a really nice camera, a teleprompter, a nice microphone? Or would you do what you see more recent radio studios where they have a nice countertop, some bar stools, everybody has a mic, in front of the announcer there's a board usually, and you then can talk with everybody, see their facial expressions. But as we move, I believe radio is going to move to cameras just because everything's going digital. Do you want to see the side of their face, or do you want to utilize these inset studios? So I'm trying to figure out which direction as a radio station do we want to go?
Well, first of all, if you have an older studio that was built in the 90s and maybe before, you've got miles of wiring. You probably don't even use half of it. But back in those days, we used 8451 Belden cable, and we'd punch it down onto a Bell Lab 66 block. So there's these white blocks with the little teeth on it, and you go chicka 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 chicka, and you would have everything was point to point. So everything would be going back to engineering or to the production studio. Definitely eliminate all of that wiring. That can be gone because IP-based stuff. So you're considering an IP-based studio methodology. So you only need one cable to go to the nodes, or you have nodes and you have consoles. The nodes basically ingest the analog or digital input. So if you have a record or a computer that's playing out the automation, or you have a satellite receiver, those become inputs to a node. Then the node talks to the console. And what's cool about that setup with an IP-based setup, sorry for taking all this time on you.
No, this is great.
This is great. Every input on every console in every room in your studios can have the same input and output. In other words, you can route the microphone from the guy down the hall in Studio A into Studio B because they're on the IP node. So it's like Dante, it's AES67, it might be WheatNet, or one of the proprietary brands out there. So what I would start with is the infrastructure would be IP-based, and that would use a hopefully not proprietary backbone to operate. It could be Dante, because they're sort of embracing Dante now. And then these console or control surfaces would be in any room where you have to have a highly active individual, either the host of the show or the producer of the show. And that would give them the leeway to be able to. And the other thing is the cost of boards have gone way down. This board beside me, new, this thing was probably about $20,000 or $30,000. Nowadays, they're much cheaper because it's cheaper to make. They're a lot easier to do. So you can even get, if you want to go in cheap, the nodes should be everywhere to satisfy whatever inputs, wherever you're ingesting inputs for the equipment. Microphones, preamps, processing, all of those things need to have a node connection. And again, you don't need these big punch blocks. All you need is IT infrastructure to connect everything together.
So you need a rack with switches.
Yeah, racked with switches and standard switches. Believe it or not, they're not made for audio, but they've been adapted and adopted for radio. And there are certain switches you can get that are specifically adopted for Dante and things like that. But, might as well just go with off-the-shelf stuff. So if you have to replace it. Go ahead, Mark.
Right. But let's take a step back. Before we even get to the equipment, what should the layout of the spaces be? Do you think you should have a 20-foot by 30-foot room with a big table in it, everybody sitting around microphones, and there's enough room on a desk for a mixing board, and there's room for monitors? Because when you're in a news talk studio, you're trying to keep up on the news. So there's monitors playing different networks so you can see breaking news. All of this tends to clutter up a desk with everybody sitting around it on bar stools, because you have so many monitors with so many different things going on today. Well, so what do? Do you just go with Inset Studios and say, hi, you're a guest here, here's your room. Go in there, and then they've got professional sound, professional cameras, and
first of all, you have a lot less people.
Each other on a TV screen.
A lot less people doing each show, whether it's talk or otherwise. I was talking to a friend of mine, Rick Jensen, who works at the local talker here in Wilmington. And he used to have a producer, and he had a phone producer that would take the phone calls in and, establish them where they have to go. And he might have a board op that's operating. He's just got a microphone and volume controls and monitoring. Now all that's gone. He pretty much does it all himself. So the roles have changed, and because the roles have changed, the configuration of the rooms have to change with them. So I would say, just my opinion, and then let's go to Alex after that, because he may have some ideas how to make it more modern, is you still need a small room for the talent to be in, because they need to be shielded from all the hubbub of gathering news and doing stuff and taking calls. So it just needs to be a 6x6 or 10x10 room that's acoustically treated properly. And by the way, 10 by 10 is not a good space. You don't want an even number of sides, because then you're going to get all kinds of cancellation and phase issues going on. So get a really nice room that you can treat it. And because you're adding now video to it, maybe have a PTZ camera that's faced on the talent, and then maybe a B shot. So you can pick up the guest, the same way you would do, and I'll go to Alex for that. It needs to be multi-purpose. So you're mixing your own audio. You're bringing in, ingesting content that's being done in a bigger room somewhere else in the building, where the team, the producers, and news gatherers are all working together. And that could be any size room. And you've seen those. We've seen it on office hours. 090 has a big room with just monitors and computers and people all working.
Right.
So basically, that would be the primary: big room for all the gear and monitors, smaller room for the talent, and maybe prettied up a little bit because it's going to be on camera. And maybe in addition to that, maybe there'd be more than one of those rooms so that you have multiple talents. Maybe your morning guy is big enough that he deserves his own little space that's designed specifically for him or her, and then you go from there. And then the other thing I would add to it, this is more modern, and Alex, you should perk up on this one. They have performance studios now in a lot of the bigger radio facilities, and what that is if you have a guest band. It could be a local band, hometown hero of some kind, or a band that's traveling and visiting. We'd have the Spin Doctors that would come in, and Bob Seger, and where they can do a performance, and that you have to set up like a studio. It's got to have the cameras and stuff like that. So I'll go over to Alex, give him a chance to chat about what you would put in that performance studio and whether he even likes that idea.
I was just trying to find a photo of the space that I'm working with, which, because I'm in the middle of designing a studio as well, and I'll get to that in a minute. But, some of the things that you both brought up, I think, are very valid. You need to think about, what is the purpose of this room? Am I going to have, like, for example, is the talent going to want some control? And if they do want some control, then you got to think about having some control surfaces there. Now, of course, most of the time now with digital consoles, with broadcast consoles, like what Lavo and what many other manufacturers are doing, is they've now decoupled the hardware, the processing, the brains of the units, including the I/O, is in some rack. Now you do not have to have that massive amount of wiring in that studio. Companies like Lavo, you can have just effectively a control surface that is connected via a single network cord to a module, to a processor with all the I/O in another room entirely. So that really cleans things up, and it doesn't. Now the console can be a lot more compact because it doesn't have to, like, you don't need technically 32 faders or bigger. You remember, we used to have these giant boards. Now with digital consoles, you can have a board with something like 8 faders and just have fader banks. So right, I have my first 8 physical faders. I hit a button. I go from 1 through 8 to 9 through 16, right? So for example, that saves a lot of space. So you got to figure out where you're going to put these people. If you're going to have an operator, then you probably want to have them in a separate room and probably have some kind of direct line of sight with the people in the room there so they can have visual contact. I hate glass windows. They're terrible for sound. A lot of people insist on them too, but we can do things too, like put TVs. You can put TV screens and cameras and stuff like that, although that's still glass technically on the TV. But yeah, these are all design considerations. If the talent's not going to have any control, then you don't need to have any kind of mixing console surface there at all. All you have to do is just have a table there, maybe have a cough button so they can mute themselves if they need to take a sip of water or cough or something like that. Just something simple, because you don't need to give them all of those physical controls there. It's just going to confuse them, right? And that requires more training on top of that.
Yeah, but I think in radio today, most of the hosts are running their own boards. So they're typically going to want to be able to at least have the audio board there. That's what they're going to be accustomed to. Whether or not you put the TV switchers and stuff in there with them is a whole nother story. But you could, with Mimo Live, you could just actually put a little iPad in there and set up their control console, even though the computer and everything else is in another room. But what I want to do is talk a little bit more about these inset studios, because Mitch was saying you don't want them to be even size because that causes problem with the audio and the acoustics. But I do think they need to be a little bit bigger than 6x6 or 8x8 or 10x10, because you really want to have a comfortable desk for the panelist to sit at, or the guest, whatever you want to call them. You want to have space for the camera, maybe a teleprompter so they're looking directly at everybody they're talking to in the screen. But you also want to be able, lessons learned, you want to be able to get behind all of that equipment when something breaks so you can fix it or rewire it or what have you.
Good point.
So now all of a sudden you're talking about, let's say, 3 feet for a chair, 30 inches for a desk, 3 feet for the shelves that are going to hold the camera and the teleprompter and everything else, and then another 3 feet to get back behind it. So now you're in a room that's like 12, 15 feet deep. It doesn't need to be that wide. It could be 8 feet wide, a 6-foot desk, maybe 9 feet wide, 3 feet to get by the desk and get around to the other equipment. But it's still a sizable room. And, so that's,
so you're showing off.
If you had 4 or 5 of those rooms, that's quite a bit of square feet.
Yeah, you're showing off your facility, so you got to have, a certain eye candy level of decorating. And I've worked in some of the studios that were non-eye candy studios, and they were pretty nasty, and the amount of cigarette tar and stuff that would attach to them, it was just very grody. But now the current ones, let's say I worked Universal Studios in Orlando, has a beautiful studio. They had a giant shark coming out of the table between the speakers. Disney, a lot of Disney characters involved. So yeah, it's going to be visually interesting. In the area of consoles, they're work surfaces, and they can be one work surface in there with them, or there can be multiple work surfaces all working. Like the producer in another room could actually have an iPad with a remote control to that console and do the console-y things that the producer needs to do. The big players in the U.S. anyhow would be Axia from our friends at Telos. That's Frank Foti and his gang. They make a lot of that gear. It all comes down to a console, a node, and then all the interconnection. Now they're doing virtual stuff, a virtual board. So less and less gear and things flying around the talent. It's a lot more streamlined. The other manufacturer, Wheatstone, is doing it. They have their own proprietary, maybe not so much anymore, system where it's, again, these are all IP based. I don't think there are many analog only boards being made out there. Maybe Arrakis does. And there's also some inexpensive boards. Our friends at Angry Audio have a board that costs $2,000. And it's like they're bragging about how cheap it is. There's a lower cost version of Wheatstone called, what is it? It is an Audio Arts. They have an Audio Arts that's like $2,000. So the prices have come way down on that because they realize that radio stations don't have the money to go out and do a giant fit out.
They don't.
And Mark, you're faced with that. You're going to have to go build from scratch. You're not going to save much of the old stuff. You're going to go with something new.
Oh, go with everything new. Right. And
so you have all that to worry about.
Yeah, and but even though the equipment has gone down in price, you still need to spend a lot of money on digital switches, internet switches for inside the building, all the Ethernet switches in the racks. So it's still a very large expenditure. I mean, we're looking at probably $100,000 just to outfit the studio with equipment.
Mark, what do you think of software-based, like touch-based solutions? Like Telos has, for example, this. They have the Axia Quasar. Software, and you can put this on a big touchscreen. You don't even need to have a physical console there. What do you think of that? Do you think that's a bridge too far for some people that will have a hard time transitioning from physical controls to a touchscreen?
I don't know. So in our situation, the people that are on air, the host, have been doing it for 10, 20 years. So they're going to want the tactile sensation you get from a traditional board. You can do all the electronics as you want. I think it's really cool. I think that it's, we did one production where we had somebody overseas helping us with one of the shows, and they were just on a computer, and you could see our board going up and down and everything, and they were thousands of miles away. So that part of it makes it very interesting, because now you can have a remote host. If the weather's really bad and they don't want to drive a half an hour to work, they can actually just fire up an iPad and just come in through a VPN and start running the show.
Yeah. And speaking as a guy that operates those boards and still do it, you need something tactile, like Mark said. If you need to turn a mic down real fast, you don't have time to figure out where it is on the glass and then touch the glass and then move the fader back and forth. You want a thing you can grab hold of and pull it back or turn it up if you're too late. So you want those tactile buttons.
I think that's true for the people that have a lot.
The other part is that you can have the DJ or the main host operate something that's more tactile, and then have it also be remote controlled, like Mark said, with an iPad or some glass console. I think it's just a little too gimmicky to have a glass board out there. They're selling a lot of the idea because I guess management likes the idea. Oh, it could be glass and it'd be pretty
but I think you have to. Yeah, I think part of the issue is age and experience, and I think when you grew up with tactile, you fall back on that. And if you grew up with a computer in your hand and you were gaming, you probably feel just as comfortable using an iPad or any kind of glass touch screen to make those adjustments.
I would take issue with that because my experience is not based on, that's the only thing I know how to operate. It's based on working with a bespoke device that has, I know, muscle memory, exactly where everything is. Right. And it's not being reconfigured. And the problem with mice is that the mouse can only be in one spot at a time. your hands can be all over the console doing things with faders and stuff like that if you need to do that. So it's not a matter of that's how I was brought up. It's a matter of that's what works. And that's as a human being
Well, I
with
think
two
some of
hands.
that's changing now because you have multi-touch, right? So I think with more advanced touch displays where you can have two hands doing two different things on the screen at the same time, that is a big difference. I mean, just look at Star Trek: The Next Generation, right? Yeah, when the LSARS interface, right? And it's a big glass surface, right? And they do important things on that. I know it's science fiction, but anyways,
You know who
I think that's changing.
That look?
Pardon me?
That's Michael Okuda.
Yeah.
Is the designer that designed that look and feel.
He's a brilliant,
wife,
brilliant
Denise,
designer,
yeah,
absolutely
brilliant
brilliant designer. But I want to get back to rooms because both of you've mentioned you've actually thrown out some numbers for sizes of rooms, and I showed this a while ago, but hey, we're talking about studios today, so let me show it again. So I'm going to show you this room
Countdown.
here. Yeah, I know I had the countdown. I had to switch tabs. All right, so this room, it's not an ideal room in terms of size for me. It is 11 by 22, so it's 11 across. So I feel that 11 feet across is going to be a little cramped because basically what I want to do is I want to have a table right here with 4 chairs, 2 on each side, and I would shoot it like this way, lengthwise, so I can get that shallow depth of field. The ceiling is only 8 feet. So it's not like super tall. I don't have a ton of room to put like a big lighting grid or anything there. But Mark, do you think this is usable? Do you think that this is a room that I can work with for a 4 or 5 person kind of setup?
I think you're going to find that it's tight because once you throw the cameras in there, it's going to be challenging to get the right throws without warping everything.
Yeah, and I thought about I got to talk with the client because I don't know if they're willing to do this. Also, physically, I don't know because it's a basement suite in a house. I don't know if you can structurally do this. But I thought of like, here's a closet, right? And then we have a gas fireplace, and this is a bedroom back here. What if we ideally, what I would prefer is that we just knock this wall out entirely and open this entire room up, right?
Well, I don't know. I haven't seen the drawings. It wouldn't be right.
We don't know. We don't know if that's possible. But
right. I mean, you're going to have.
Like to do that.
I don't know where the fireplace vents. Does it vent outside directly? What's on the other side of the external wall? Is it above grade?
I don't know. I mean, there's a bedroom.
So you don't know where does that exhaust for that fireplace go all the way up through to the roof?
That's good question. I don't have an answer to that. I'll have to find out.
Channel to the exterior wall, and that's a lot. And you don't know if that wall's in some way, shape, or form structural or part of a wind shear wall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've worked in dozens of radio stations. I've designed studios for people doing radio programs, and that's a lot of space. Just for the talent and hosting the show. It might be a good space for if you want to put, a podcast and you have the producer in there and the talent in front of them and the camera in front and behind and to the side, room for guests. I can see that. It might make a nice performance room too, for that. Maybe have an area that one end allows you to, move shit around and
that's what I was thinking because I thought we were thinking about business ideas, what we could do for this space as a place that people could rent out to record their own podcast. They could come in there and do interviews over Zoom, so there could be a corporate angle to it. Maybe it could be because we've got a couple of spare rooms and this extra space that we could turn it into like a music. Like one could be like a music producing room. There could be all sorts of things that we could do with it. One thing I thought of is maybe putting the cameras on the walls, right? So instead of having these big tripods here in the corners, I thought about, well, why don't I just put these big arms, these articulating arms? Oh, sorry. I thought about, why don't we just put and you can't see the other side, but I could save quite a bit of space, right? If I just put these big articulating arms that you could pull out, right? And I don't know who makes that kind of, Yellowtech makes some stuff like that, but what do you think of articulating arms on the walls for the cameras?
That might work, but I think you're getting ahead of yourself. Have you even checked if you can run a business in that house?
No,
I haven't. Check with the zoning. Yeah, you got to check with the. Yeah, check with the zoning.
Might be a
first.
zoning issue.
Yeah, you may not have permission to have a business that's a business more than just your home office. If you got people
And
coming in and
what I
out,
would
that
do,
red flags are going to go up.
Alex, what I would do is plan out how you're going to use that space. There's plenty of planning layouts and things like that. Don't do things that lock you in down the road, like installing cameras on the wall and hanging them from a grid in the ceiling or doing stuff like that. I think that kind of limits you down the road where you may decide that your situation is too complicated now and you want to change it. There's a reason why a good old fashioned tripod on wheels can do a
That's
great
fair.
job. You can
That's
move it
fair.
around, you can bring it out or put it away depending on how you need it. I would see for the talent to get a face shot and maybe the shot that's across the talent for the guest, maybe a dedicated camera for that. And that might be on like a Mica arm or something of that nature. But be careful about building stuff permanently into that space because your needs may vary as time goes on.
Yeah.
And by the way, there's people that make studio furniture and design it, and there's some brilliant people out there. And I can't remember the name. I keep saying Studio Technologies, but that's my switcher. It's Studio something. Before the end of the show, I'll remember the name of the company. But they're right over the Pennsylvania line. It's a big wood shop, and they make a lot of the gear for just do a search under studio furniture. And you're going to see a lot of stuff that will give you inspiration. The way it's built, the way it has the little scoops on it. They understand the idea of having a guest and a host, and the camera angles need to be set up. And by the way, while you're hearing us talk about this, once you get your 2 cents in there, and you do that by going to ask.thelastangry.dj.com, we appreciate your input. We're seeing a little bit here. I see some stuff from Peter Sargent and others. And Mark, while we're talking, you could scan the commentary. I love the picture you have up, Mark. Looks like WMAL
Yes.
in Washington.
Yes,
That's a beautiful
WMALs.
setup.
I just found it on the website. We were looking at WTOPs earlier. They're really nice setups in big markets, not in little
OmniRax
markets.
used to make desks like that. I don't know. if they're
OmniRax
still
is one of them. Prefab. They do prefab. But look how that space is being used. You got an area where there's a console there. It might be a Wheatstone. Looks like it from here. You might have a Vox Pro controller for recording phone conversations or listener input, and then you want to edit it and have it. I mean, you're doing a lot of stuff yourself. It's kind of getting back to the old days of radio where I did all that stuff myself. I didn't have a room full of people doing it all for me until later.
Right. It looks like the
so
automation.
you need to have multi. See how that desk is almost circular and has those little scalloped areas that's delineating a guest position.
Right.
And then they've got that beautiful wraparound, aerial view of Baltimore.
Washington. That's
It
decent.
looks like Baltimore to me, but anyhow,
See the Washington
and a window to the side so they can give cues to whoever's in the room there. That's a pretty setup, and it's visually interesting.
Yeah, it looks like the dad is here with the yellow and pink on the right side monitor, and then you've got some other.
He's talking about the
monitors.
automation for the running the radio. A lot of them are set up like that now. They look like a log, but the Enco products look like that. The big players are iMedia Touch, Enco, RCS. They have a thing called Zeta, and a lot of them are going up on the cloud too, so you can control the automation. The automation basically does all the sequencing. It plays the sound bites, it plays the jingles if you have any music, any kind of introduction you have for yourself, the commercials, of course. Like I said, all that stuff needs to be. It's all in a box, and the box probably lives in the engineering section of the studio and facility, and the only thing you got is a switch, remote monitor. What do they call them? Help me out here. How do you remote a monitor and a keyboard? It just went out of my head.
KVM switch.
KVM switch. That's all they have. So you want to get all that stuff out of that room. So if it needs to be worked on, it can be done without interrupting the show. It generates heat. Got to consider all those things. I mean, Mark is the architect. He's the one that could tell you how to best use all this. But I love the idea of a performance studio with a psych in it. Maybe.
Yeah.
Don't go too crazy with the fit out because it's got to serve a lot of purpose. It might be your meeting room. It might be for studio guests when you're doing a very important guest for a show. Try to think how many different ways you can use this space for different things. That's my best advice to you in terms of designing a space for radio or internet or podcasting and that kind of stuff. The cameras are going to change as time goes on, so don't build it around one particular camera. If you want a high-end camera, that Sony PTZ is a good camera. A good
FR7.
FR7, thanks. A good cousin to that, if it's in a fixed position, is the FX6 from Sony. You can get those used now for like the body, like for $4,000 or $5,000. That's dirt cheap in the world of camera bodies. Then you got lenses and stuff to deal with. But that would be the best scenario as far as camera gear goes.
So you're mentioning cinematography type cameras where you get a lot of bokeh because of that's the style of that camera. But when I do that. When I talked to our radio engineer, who used to be a cameraman for ABC News and was part of the press pool for the president, he does not like the bokeh. He's like, it's got to be focused front to back in the same, all the focus has to be consistent. He doesn't.
Well, close the iris down, and that goes away. I mean, it's just a matter of the setting. I'm just saying a documentary style camera, which happens to be the FX6. It's not necessarily a cinema camera. And if it was, it's the low end, as is my FX3 and that PTZ camera. Those are fine. What you don't want to try to repurpose a webcam like an old Logitech 920 or something that gives you that. There's some pretty interesting cameras coming out now. Hollyland just announced a camera called a Lyra. It's a 4K camera that's this big. It's tiny. And, of course, you got the Insta360s and stuff like that. I think those innovations are continuing to move.
Yeah, don't fall for that 4K. We all just learned about Zoom and upgrading all the throughput it can do, and some of those little 4K cameras don't have very good throughput.
Well, Alex, tell us what's on the pipeline for Zoom.
Yeah, so they just announced a new feature called Enhanced Media Support, and it's going to be a paid feature. They don't have, I think they're aiming for March 21st, but we don't know if they're actually going to hit that date exactly at this point. But basically, it's a bunch of things. So for one thing, they are now going to support higher frame rates. So currently, they only support 30. They're going to offer support for up to 60 frame rates per second. But in addition to that, and as far as I'm concerned, the even more important announcement here is that they are going to increase the bit rate that they support in terms of data streams. So they are doubling it from 6 to 12 megabits per second. And we've already done some tests in an account that is part of the office hours community. We were testing it this morning, and you can see the image quality improvements better. It's not as heavily compressed. You can see more details in people's faces. The color is better. So I think for me, that's the most exciting thing, is the overall better image quality. So I'm really looking forward to turning that on.
Yeah, and Mark, your point is well taken, is that you don't want to exceed the useful resolution that you have for your application. Things are going to change, and 4K is going to be a thing. Here's an interesting point. I'll just bring this up as a tidbit. A couple of TV manufacturers have announced that they're ceasing construction of 8K televisions because nobody wants them, because there's no material out there that's showing 8K. Now, maybe it looks a little bit better to the average eye, but I think a lot of people are just as happy with their 4K, maybe some even like 1080. I like 1080, progressive, it's okay. When I'm sitting across a room, I can't tell the difference between that and a 4K image. 8K is just going overboard. And your broadcasters are definitely not embracing 8K. They barely embrace 4K. On broadcast, they don't do 4K. They might do 720p or 1080i, but they're not embracing that. So, you don't have to force an extraordinary amount of resolution into a pipeline that's this tiny. And as Mark was inferring, so far for Zoom, it's 1080. But, hey, next week they might have Zoom broadcast. And now they're going to 4K. Or something else, and then your cameras need to be up to it. If I had to go to 4K, my camera can do 4K. It's doing 60 frame right now, but I've got an ATEM switcher, and that's going to do 60, and that's it. It's not going. It doesn't care whether the camera's 12 megabits per second or 8 or 6.
Well,
I mean,
you know what's going to be really interesting, Mitch, is someone here today, right now, is taking a trip in the future, and I understand where they're going, has been doing 8K over-the-air broadcast for like 10 years now. So it'll be interesting when that person gets back from their trip and they've seen some of the TV over there, if they think that the 8K is so much better.
I did not know that about Japan. So some people may know I am leaving for Japan March 6th. I'm going for 12 days. So I didn't know that they did 8K broadcast there, but that's definitely something I'm gonna look out for. And you know, I don't know for certain if I'm going to be able to do the show on that one Sunday that I'm not going to be in town for, but I might bring some gear with me if the internet is stable in the hotel room. There's a lot of factors there,
it's
but
Japan.
If the internet is good,
it is.
I might be able to be on the show. It depends. I looked at the time difference. So when we broadcast this show live, it's 7 a.m. in Japan. So that's not really that early in the morning, and I get up early anyway. So I might be able to do it. We'll see.
8K ain't making it right now. I'm just telling you. There's no material to speak of that people can look at it. There's no movies are being released in 8K. All right, go ahead, Mark. But let me finish my point. Let me finish my point. Is a lot of talk about it, but whatever happened to 3D? Wonder where that went for TVs. 3D TV. People didn't want it. They don't need it. How about quadraphonic records and quad radio and AM stereo? All those things that people just said, ho hum. HD radio, I think, is who cares? My radio sounds fine. Doesn't need HD. All right, Mark, go ahead.
All I was going to do was bring up something in good timing. Vic Hernandez says people who have experienced 8K 120 say it's like looking out a window.
From 10 feet away or looking at it NAB up on top of it with stuff that was shot specifically for that demonstration. See, I just don't think it's practical. You know, a lot of those trade shows that they do, you know, they've got flowers and hummingbirds and unicorns and rainbows. So it's all manufactured for the demo. It's not good for practical. They're not shooting movies for 8K release. They might be shooting it in 8K, but they're not doing it as a release in 8K.
I understand that 8K looks really good when you hang the 8K TV above your fireplace.
He's just baiting me here because I have a thing about people that put their TVs over their fire. First of all, let's talk about it for a second. Putting on the fireplace means that now you're looking up at the TV above your fireplace. That's not good for the neck, ladies and gentlemen. It's not good to have the fire smoking and, you know, spewing hot gases into your beautiful $4,000 Sony or whatever you might have, your TCL. So please don't do that. You want the TV to be at eye level across the room, wherever it is, and it's usually around 10 feet. That's about it. And guess what? 1080 looks pretty damn good at 10 feet. You can't tell the difference between a 4K and an 8K image from 10 feet away. It just does. I mean, they both look good, but you're not seeing the individual pixels unless you're up on top of it. So let's be careful about how we evaluate these things.
Let's get on to questions, shall we?
Yes, let's go.
Okay. From John in Monterey, California, for Mitch, what is one highlight of each decade of your broadcast career? Follow up, what event had the greatest impact?
You know, for me, when I started in the 70s, I started in 1971. That was a pivotal year for music. Music was so amazing. So I'm going to say music because back then I would play the Rolling Stones one second and then Helen Reddy the next. Stairway to Heaven, and then the Rhythm Nation doing the theme from SWAT. I mean, it's just like the amazing contrast and changes in music that all sort of coexisted together on Top 40. It was amazing. It was truly amazing. So that was very interesting. It wasn't so segregated, and everything didn't sound quite the same. It was very, very, very different between it. The other thing, in part of that early decade, we'll say the 70s and part of the 80s, was that as a disc jockey, you were doing a lot of stuff yourself. That's talking back to what we were just mentioning, is that I played my own records. Most of the stuff was records. As we went into the 80s, we started playing CDs. Same thing as a disc. I'm jockeying them around. And then the next big change came in the 90s with automation. And that meant that we didn't need to have record players and cart machines that played cartridges, that played commercials, etc. The automation took those things over. So, you're still the DJ, but you were syncing the events as they needed to play. So if you were talking and then you needed to play a jingle, you just hit next, and you had a thing in front of you that was showing what was next in the lineup. It was all pre-programmed by the program director and the music director. All that stuff was a big change. I still have PTSD worrying about where, I wake up in the middle of the night worried about where the next record is, and I don't have enough time to get that on. And where is that commercial? It's filed incorrectly. It was a crazy time. So automation was huge in the 90s, and I did a little bit of radio into the and towards the end of the 90s. And for me, the idea that being a big personality was no longer what the big companies that owned all the radio stations. That towards the end of the 90s, going into the aughts, there were big companies that were buying up a lot of radio stations. They had these crazy valuations that they bought, like, what is it, Clear Channel, which became iHeart, owned like 1,000 radio stations. That's some crazy number.
I think it's 1,200.
Their return on investment might initially look good on paper because these stations had these crazy valuations. But from then there was a correction, and then the money started going down. And, I'd say that the big change today, as far as the decade goes, is that radio it needs to reinvent itself. It can't continue to hang on its laurels from the 80s. It's a different business and a business model. And I think Mark would make the argument that Live and Local, as a small business and radio owner like himself, he can compete with those big boys by being live and local and cover his area really deeply, far more than a big company that's out in the middle of the Midwest somewhere, out in the West Coast, that's operating, thousands of radio stations. They're trying to, have a return on investment that means there's economies of scale that allows them to duplicate their programming. Well, they can't be live and local when they're like that. They can't cover it quite the same way. Maybe there's some exceptions. I don't know. Go ahead.
Part of it's the setup and how they're organized. They're publicly traded, so they have to show quarterly results. And we know that sometimes over the long haul, the quarterly results don't lead to success over a long period of time. They're more instant gratification. So those companies are kind of restricted by trying to make the shareholders happy, whereas the smaller stations can really focus on the community. And if the results don't come in this quarter, they may come in a year from now. So that's
I would predict that a lot of those big companies are going to start shedding below market radio stations. Like, say they'll keep the top 50 markets, then they'll start selling off the other radio stations in the top 100 or whatever, and make them more price affordable to local owners. So the mom pa organizations may have a better shot at owning them and running them live and local. And I think that might be the savior of the future of radio. But it might be talk radio. It might not be music. Why would you listen to music on the radio when you can get anything you want when you want it on Pandora or Spotify or Apple Music? It's just not a proper distribution method anymore to do that. And the other thing is, Alex has talked about this often enough, and I'll let him speak for himself. They've also taken away the personality and the depth of what radio guys like myself as a disc jockey could do. Alex, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, you're 100% on. I mean, I'm not sure what else I can say to that. I mean, I don't really hear any interesting personalities on the radio. I turn it on the radio every now and again when I'm driving to and from work, and I don't really like what I hear at big popular radio stations anymore. I don't know where those those people have gone. But, I just want to also bring in a comment here from the chat made recently by Victor Hernandez that said, I feel MTV was the biggest thing that happened to popular music in the last 50 years. MTV drove radio playlists. And I think he's 100% spot on. We can't forget about the huge cultural impact in the United States that MTV had. And up here in Canada, we had Much Music. Much Music was a massive, massive big deal for artists here to get discovered, and for people, for creative talent, for the VJs that worked at Much Music that started out when they're 19, 20, 21, 22, to get on TV, they that really set off their careers, and they went off to do other great things. Look at George Stroumboulopoulos. I mean, he's famous now, right? So
video did truly kill the radio star, in the long run. And then in the end, where's MTV? I don't think they're playing music anymore. Didn't they famously announce they're out of the music business? It might be MTV, but they're all do those reality shows and stuff like that. But, here's the thing. I think there's room for that personality and knowledge to come back. Imagine Rick Beato, who does a great podcast. If you get a chance, check him out on YouTube. If he did a live radio show, bringing in the guests that he does, I know a lot of people would listen to that. I would. I'd be glued to the radio if he syndicated it and did it from Atlanta. I think he's in the Atlanta region. That would be very interesting, and I think that's where it should go. Not the guys that are doing the shuck and jive. Hey, everybody, it's 6:25 on Radioland. Those days are gone. They're dead and buried, and I'm a bit of a dinosaur for that. But that's how I was trained. To be the crazy disc jockey voice. And Alex is probably smiling because he thinks it's funny when I do the affected radio voice.
Well,
everybody talking.
I think it is funny, but I don't know how much that is training. I don't think you can train somebody to have a voice like that. I think you just have that. You're born with you're born with a set of pipes. Yes, you can absolutely. I'll give you that. You can absolutely improve your communication with experience over time, with learning and being aware of bad habits that you're developing. But I think fundamentally, you either have a gift or you don't have a gift. And you clearly do have a gift for your voice. Not everybody does.
I don't talk like that either. That's what people think radio guys sound like. They think, well, if when I think of a disc jockey and I see it in the movies, the guy's talking like this and he's like crazy. And
yeah, but you're not that far off from that, Mitch.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate that. Why don't we go to the next
question?
When you call me,
by the way, people don't realize when Mitch calls me on his cell phone, he somehow, because of the lo-fi quality of the phone call, he sounds even more radio on a cell phone than he does here on YouTube in high fidelity.
They have an app for that.
Yeah.
There you go. Mark, help me out.
All right, the next question again from John in Monterey for Alex. On the Office Hour Global Thursday show, The Rundown, and other spinoffs, the host is also tech crew running the show. Mm-hmm. On other Office Hour Global shows, Extra Hours, Focus, and the AM show, there is a crew. What do you see as the value of the different models?
Well, John in Monterey, if that is your real name, there's this thing called money, which we don't have on this show. Otherwise, I would hire a crew to do this show. Do you think I enjoy doing this, like panic and just anxiety and making sure I'm cutting to the right camera angle because I do screw up occasionally?
Panic on the radio.
I wouldn't do it. Honestly, I would much rather leave this to a crew if we could. But I will say the one thing that has been beneficial is getting out of my comfort zone, learning a complex production tool, pushing the boundaries of what I think is possible with production tools through Zoom, through the internet, through YouTube, rising above the what is considered good enough, what is considered average for production quality for a YouTube show. So there's that.
Got it. Next question.
Mm-hmm.
All right, our next question's for Mark, and it's from John in Monterey, California. How has your experience working with Office Hours Global and The Last Angry DJ helped your various day jobs as an architect, in a radio station network owner, and as a techie? Wow, look
great
at all
question.
That.
Great question.
I do all that? So let's start with architecture. In architecture, I had to make a presentation to a big federal agency right around the time office hours started. And it was because of that that I had my own little ATEM. And that made a huge difference because we had to go out and present to 100 different people what a project was going to be doing and the different parts of a project and get input from every potential team that was going to be involved in the project, from the fire chief in the local community all the way to the architects, the code reviewers, everybody that could be there was there. And because it was during COVID, some of the agencies were only allowed to send 10 people to the event, and there were 12 rooms that the meeting was occurring in for different aspects of the meeting. It was a complete failure when we tried to do it live there, all in person, people flying from all over the country to do it. So they made us redo it. And when we redid it, I brought a little ATEM Mini, a couple of cameras. People pinned up drawings on the wall. I zoomed into them. We could switch between cameras. We had a camera, a far away shot, a close-up shot, some side angle shots. And they were really impressed. And now they've written it into the future of some way they want some of the presentations done. So I learned all of that on office hours. As for the radio station, well, the radio station, we're taking the stuff I learned on office hours. We're taking Mukana. We're bringing it into radio and allowing radio to become far more interactive than talk radio ever was when you just had one caller at a time. So it's helped there as well. In terms of techie, well, I'm learning a lot of stuff, forgetting a lot of stuff too, but I'm learning a lot of stuff just from Alex and Mitch and everyone else on office hours. So thanks to everybody on office hours. You've helped me tremendously.
Yeah, we all got something out of our relationship with office hours. The quality of the presentation, little details. Mark, let me give you another compliment that goes along the lines with John's question. You've come a long way in your presentation skills, your ability to read questions and present in front of a group of people. Not that you were horrible in the beginning. You were horrible, but you've gained a lot of confidence, and that's a big piece of how to do.
Well, he learned how to read on this show.
Yes,
yeah, exactly.
I did.
He didn't know how to.
It was the AI implant chip that you're really not hearing me. You're hearing chat. Anyway.
You're so funny. You're so funny. I can't believe it. All right. Well, let's
should we move on to the beef of the week? Are we ready?
I think so. I think we're ready for Mitch's beef of the week. I got a quick and easy one. There it is. Beef of the week, the very expensive graphic. Thanks to Oliver Breidenbach. Thank you, Oliver. We like that. That's a cool look. My beef is all my life, because I like Star Trek. People keep calling it Star Trek. It really just puts my undies in a twist when I'm out and, hey, did you see that Star Trek show? I said, Star Trek. It's been out. It's been 50, 60 years. You can learn to say it correctly. And then they go on to say, yeah, I had that alien, Dr. Spock. I said, Dr. Spock was a child psychiatrist, and Mr. Spock was his name, or Commander Spock at the time. He is a science officer of the Starship Enterprise NCC 1101.
You gotta say it like the comic book guy. Excuse me, I believe he was a science officer. You are mistaken, sir.
Yes, like Lower Decks, like they're doing. So get it right. Come on, it's been out long enough. You got to be able to do it correctly. And in the world, if you were to look ahead into the future and think that William Shatner in his 90s was doing ads for Raisin Bran because it helped you poop, and he'd be on the Super Bowl, would you really believe that was possible? If I said, well, in the future, William Shatner is going to be promoting Raisin Bran to help you poop, and they're going to call it Will Shat. It's true. It really is happening. So I'm afraid of making future predictions anymore about talent. It's ridiculous. Mark, go ahead. You're making faces.
We need a beeper. We need a beeper.
A what? A beeper.
A beeper for the name of that personality that does something in the past tense.
You mean like that fish on WTF?
No.
Where it talks to him? I don't like time shifting scenarios, and I think it's a writer hack that jumps a shark all the time. So.
You don't like the beeper?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
The beeper in radio when somebody says a bad word. You said a bad word.
You mean
In the
like
past
shit?
tense. Yes. Beep.
Well, do you want to? Hey, wait
You're
a minute.
gonna
Let
get
me
the-
add
hold
to my
on, this-
beep.
You're going to
show-
get the look. You're
Let
going
me
to get
add
the
to my beep.
This show is marked explicit. If you look at our podcast, it's got the big letter E, contains mature language.
Okay,
It's all good.
so let's think about cursing on broadcast. On the famous TV series Battlestar Galactica, they brilliantly wrote this word into as a bad word. They called frack. Now, obviously, you know what they mean. They're really saying, you know what? But they're saying frack, and that was acceptable because it wasn't the actual word. What's going through your head when you hear frack? You're thinking FUC, whatever. And the other thing is, when you hear a beep, it's, a bad word just got said. So, if the beep isn't explicit enough to tell you what bad word they said, a bad word was said. Nothing's changed here. They might as well just let it go and let that word go through, and maybe won't call attention to it. But when you're watching, what was it, the Chopper show that was on American Chopper, and Paul Tuttle would beep 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 beep, or any of the other reality shows. That's all they're doing.
but they were over cable. They were over cable.
Who cares? People are watching
I'm just saying,
over
it was
cable.
the FCC that was the ones that said this is public airways. They didn't want you to curse over public airways because kids might be listening. That was
let's get that straight too. For the record, the FCC does not say you can't say F you, so and so. They say you can't do things that are against the public interest in your market. In other words, it's up to you to decide what's a curse word. They don't specifically say FCC list of bad words you can't say. It's not like George Carlin list. So what happens is if you get a letter that's been copied to the FCC that says so-and-so said poop on his show, and they said, that's a bad word, you can't do that, the FCC would write you back and say, how do you respond to this complaint? Are you going to apologize to them? You're a general manager, owner, Mark. Do you get people to complain about your content sometimes?
If somebody misses a beep, if the bad word gets said, and like a caller calls in, you never know what they're going to say.
It's going to happen.
If somebody's a little slow on the beeper, we get phone calls right away to the business office. People call off the hook.
Okay. You don't have a
we want
7
to generate
second delay?
calls, so we do. We do.
You don't
but
have
if
the
somebody
equipment
misses, no, we do. We do have it. But
if you
it
do a
somehow
7 second
gets
delay with a dump on it, how do you miss that?
Can you guys can you just quickly explain how does this functionally work? If somebody swears, you have that delay. What's the process? What are you doing?
You instantly have a dump button if you have one of the devices I'm thinking of.
Okay, what does that do? Dump. Like what is
dump will let's say you've built up a 7 second delay. I'll go this way just so because it's vertical.
Right.
And when you hit dump, it does an auto edit to something more current. So everything between here and here is gone. It's just been eliminated. So all of a sudden, the word was
I was going to say
somewhere between
7 seconds is not enough for a human being to blip that. That's why I always wondered, how do you actually do that?
It just gives you the option to say, oh, he just said a bad word, and then hit
how
dump.
do you program? So you program automation that cuts to a commercial or something, or like
No. I just said
it makes a
It's
tone.
a device that creates a delay of 7 seconds, and here's the buffer. Okay, and when you hit the dump button, you eliminate everything. You just did an edit essentially of what happened in the last.
And it puts in the beep for you.
So let me explain.
Yeah, go ahead.
Doesn't
Walking
beep, it just
around a
cuts it
radio
out.
station, if you're standing next to the studio, you hear the words as they go into the microphone. If you walk down the hall and the radio's on, you're 7 seconds behind what the person's actually saying in the studio. That allows the equipment to buffer for 7 seconds. And then when somebody hits the button, it's just sending out a tone, the beep that you hear.
Usually not a beep. It's just doesn't edit. Just cuts it out. And then what happens, Alex, at that point is, if you can cut to my shot again, is that you just did the dump, the appropriate word, and then it slowly builds up a delay again from zero. And that's a lot of times when you hear a dump happen or a beep, whatever Mark says is on there. Sometimes the voice starts to get that little, it starts warbling a little bit because some devices are better at compressing the live audio, so it builds that thing up. So if you're going to curse on the radio and you don't like the radio station, say the word. They're gonna hit the dump and then say it again. And they don't have enough buffer because the buffer takes a little time to build up. So if you want to game the system, just say it twice.
Mitch, you just gave away the
secret, Mitch.
You just gave away the industry inside secret.
No, Mark's.
Now I got to buy 2 beepers.
Two, one after the other.
You might need 3 with this guy.
That's fun. I don't call them beepers. I don't know what you're calling it, but that's what the heck.
Know. It's just the red button you hit, the dump button.
Yeah, the dump button. That's what it's called. So some of them will dump all the way. Some will dump, half of it, within the last 2 seconds or 3 seconds, whatever the timing is. But there's a bunch of companies that make a company called 24/6 makes it Eventide. Made the first one that was digital. Back in the old days, we used to run a tape loop, and we had the tape being monitored on one side. The end of the tape loop would be over here on the playback head, and this is the record head. And when you switched between the heads, then you essentially eliminated the delay. But the problem is it couldn't build up a delay digitally, so you couldn't. You had to be on top of things. That person's long gone. That call has been ejected. So if somebody goes, Baba Booey, or whatever, and you want to get rid of it, you just hit the button, and off it goes.
And then hang up.
And then hang on them with prejudice, and then you've got them. And then, yeah, you're right. On some shows, they can disclaim it like we do, that there's a chance that something bad may be said. The only complaints I ever got when I did an edgy morning show was that I'd have a mom call. This is a good example. I'd have a mom call and say, "What you just did was hilarious. I almost wrecked my car laughing. But the problem is my daughter was sitting in the back seat, and I had to explain to him what you were talking about." And that was a bit of a wake-up call. I was thinking, well, it was a double entendre. It was close enough that the kid didn't pick up on what I was saying, but the adult certainly did, and her reaction got the kid to say, "What's going on here?"
And let me guess, you were a complete jerk, and you said, "Well, that sounds like a you problem."
No, I wouldn't do that.
You should have said that.
When
that
a mom
like
calls and is talking
problem.
about their daughter with them in the car, I was very sympathetic to that. And I've had complaints, and Mark certainly has had. Mark's had some big complaints about content on his show because he does politics and other things that usually they call in and tell you what they think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes, we get that a little bit.
The big threat. I'm never going to listen to your station again. In fact, I'm going to tell all my friends never to listen to your station again. And I would just burst out laughing to the general manager who was that called me aside. And they say, "What are you laughing?" I said, "They're going to keep listening because they want to catch me doing it again." So it's like I'd never take it seriously when they complain about my content. And I want to call the FCC. I said, "Good luck with that. You might as well call Comcast while you're at it. See if you can get through to them. It's not going to work." So, any more questions? I think we've exhausted our radio.
I think that's it
for today. We have a blast doing this, and it wouldn't happen without your help. Thank you so much, Alex. How do people reach out and tell us what they'd like us to do? Give us some suggestions of who you'd like to see as a guest, like Leo Laporte, somebody like that, or bring our buddy Bob Bowersox back. I'm trying all those things right now. So, how do they reach out and tell us that?
Yeah, absolutely. There are definitely ways that you can help. So if you'd like to be part of the show, one of the things that you can do is join our Discord community. So you're going to see a QR code hovering over my left shoulder here. So if you just pull out your phone, open the camera app, that'll take you to the link in your web browser where you can just click a button, put in your name, and join our server where you can talk to us after the show. We've got all sorts of channels there to talk about the show, so we can talk about guests that you want to see on the show, topics you want to see us tackle in future episodes. And of course, we broadcast the show every Sunday at 2 p.m. Pacific. That's 5 p.m. Eastern time. And if you are here live on YouTube, you can hit the subscribe button. That will make sure you get notified when this show goes live every single week. Of course, if you prefer it as a podcast, we are available in audio-only format, and that is available in all podcast apps, all platforms as well. And just to name a few, we are on Apple, We are on Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, Pandora, iHeartRadio. You can ask your smart devices like your Amazon Alexa or any other smart device to play The Last Angry DJ, and we will be there. If you'd like to show your support monetarily, of course, you can go to patreon.com/TheLastAngryDJ. That's patreon.com/TheLastAngryDJ. Operators are standing by for your $2 a month contribution. Just $2 a month. We call it being a coffee supporter. It helps us out. Everything helps out a little bit. Of course, share it with a friend. That's another way that you can help us out. And of course, we'd like to thank the fine folks at Boink Software that provide this production tool called Mimo Live that we use every single week to produce this show in stunning resolution, and soon to be in March, even better with the enhanced bit rate coming soon in Zoom and higher frame rate. In fact, we are testing something today. Even though Zoom, for its source contributions right now on our account, are still stuck at 30, I have decided to double the frame rate in the stream that's going out to YouTube. So we're not at 4K 60. I had to downgrade the resolution just a little bit just to make sure my Mac Mini didn't implode. But we're broadcasting at 1440p, which is about 33% better than 1080. But we are now at 60 frame rates per second. So I'm going to move my hand. You can see how I'm looking. So it's really upscale. It's adding frames that don't exist right now. But soon we will be natively at 60. So drop a comment if you are in the chat right now, whether it's Makana or YouTube. Please let us know. And if you are watching this after the fact, you can always jump into Discord. Give us some feedback on what you think the show looks like at that faster frame rate. If you think that's maybe you don't like the soap opera effect, maybe you're stuck in 24 frame rates per second world, and you want us to be more cinematic. I don't know. You tell us. All right, that's it, Mitch.
Alex, what's that thing behind you?
What thing?
That thing behind you.
This thing.
Yes.
It's called a camera mesh. Have you ever heard
behind
of it?
you? Yeah.
The thing with
what
the
is
lens.
That?
It's
actually
this
like
is a
spine on you. Is
so
it a
this is
thing?
This camera was given to me by my dad. It's about a 12, 13-year-old camera now. It is a Nikon D610. It is an older full-frame DSLR, and he gave it to me with a case and a couple of lenses on it. So I'm just kind of messing around with it right now.
Oh, that's good. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
And Mark, that wasn't a beep. That was a bunk. You can substitute any sound, whatever, if you want to block something out. But when you hear something like something obviously happened. So that was my point earlier that I was doing.
Yeah.
What have you learned on today's show?
You know, you ask me this every week, and
I do.
Every week I can say that I learned something new. I just can't remember what it was. Come on, but where's your sound effect?
I don't know how to answer
Where's your
that.
sound effect?
Completely
Mitch?
overwhelmed.
Oh, I've exceeded my sound effect limit. So.
Oh man, I was waiting for a bump.
Oh, that too.
Terrible,
Okay, there's way too many to go searching for. What do you think? I'm Fred Norris over at the Stern Show?
Yes.
He's got every sound effect ready to go at any time. Come on. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so very much. Appreciate your participation, our regulars and the new folks that are coming in. We thank you. Don't forget that ask.thelastangrydj.com lives out there on the internet all the time. So you can comment, I guess, after you reset the show. What does that usually happen? Right after the show? And then
not after the show. I usually like to wait a day.
Okay, so you got a day before Alex axes the Mukana, which is we should have like a musical procession or something. Let's all go to the counter now. Let's all go, something fun and exciting. So thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it. We'll look forward to seeing you all again next week on The Last Angry DJ.
Swagger down the street with your red lips and funky beat. You better hold your head up to the sky. I'm gonna roll with you till the day I die.